All right. So, uh, League of Legends Classic is today, and this video is a little bit late, but we're going to do some Classic, or sorry, we're going to go through the patch notes and then jump right into Classic for today. So if you're on YouTube, this is just the patch notes for 26.15. But if you're here watching on Twitch, we're going to be doing some Classic today, and I'll probably upload some Classic games onto the YouTube afterwards. So if you are watching this on YouTube, there should be some other gameplays up. If not now, then very soon. But anyway, I moved back to my old camera. The angle's a little weird. I hope this looks okay. It seems fine, but we've got no time to waste. Let's go ahead and get into League of Legends, patch 26.15. I'm actually kind of excited, not gonna lie to you. So, welcome to patch 26.15 and season 3, where Bel'Veth has some changes she'd like to introduce to you, starting with a patchwork update. So I did see a little bit of this, what was it, on Reddit, I think, where someone uploaded a small video, or not a small video, a small little list of changes, so that we have some changes to Bel'Veth that we need to look into. And some people said it was a rework. I don't think it's a rework, but it might be a rework. Whatever. But big thing first, Classic is here. I'm very excited. I think we're all a little excited. We also got some new skins, some very basic or seemingly small nerfs and buffs. Another nerf to Locke. Again, I've played one game of Locke now. That's why there's no video. I played one game of him, and it was an arena. I can't get him in a Summoner's Rift game. He's banned every game. So another nerf to him, a nerf to Mordekaiser. We saw it coming. Let's just get into it. So first things first, League Classics here. We just went over that. Ranked Season 3 is starting. It says 12 p.m. July 29th. So that's today, actually. Aegis of Valor. Refocusing Aegis entirely around victory. It no longer reduces LP losses in the case of defeat, and wins will award double LP without requiring a minimum mastery score. Wow, really? Yeah. See, this is exactly what I was worried would happen when they first introduced the Aegis. Because this is what happened when they had role-related LP gains, right? Where people wouldn't care if they got secondary role. This is what happened with Aegis of Valor. People get autofilled, they just play for the B, right? They don't even care about trying to win. They just basically play for KDA. So now, Aegis of Valor. You will lose LP if you lose. You need to try to win. And if you do win, double LP. I saw this coming. I think we all did. Apex duo restrictions. Master players will not be able to duo, but only with players close to them in rank. GM Challenger and players with GM or Challenger MMR will not be allowed to duo. For more details, exact restrictions, see here. This is how it should just work. Let's get right into the champions. Alistar. Alistar, 5 movement speed buff. Interesting. Ever since the loss of mobility boots and symbiotic souls, Alistar has felt constrained in his gameplay to the point he's failing to compete in current meta, even though it favors roaming supports. Is he really? I feel like he's fake weak. But I guess that's why they're giving him the little movement speed buff, right? It helps. It's something. 5 movement speed, it's always been a controversial nerf / buff over the years because people have been very confused onto whether or not it was really worth it to nerf or buff champions in that fashion. I think it's actually a good change because all this character does is, walk around the map anyway, looking for opportunity. So 5 movement speed is actually a big deal. Which, by the way, I think we should just nerf support in general. I played a game yesterday, and the enemy support was 3 and 12, and she still had 3 items when I was barely completing my 4th item. Supports get too much gold, I think. And it was a Zoe support, too. It wasn't even a real support. Anyway, Bel'Veth. So we got some big changes here for the Empress of the Void. She's also getting a new skin soon for Fairy Court, which turns her into a moth. This patch, we're launching a set of Bel'Veth changes that are aimed at making her gameplay pattern a bit less focused around her early game, in order to allow her to fulfill her fantasy as a late game scaling champion. Major changes here are making her Q at early levels function more like a regular dueling ability, in order to reduce just how heavily she can put certain champions behind with early invades. Historically, this Q tuning has caused us to repeatedly balance around her early strength at a loss to many of her other core functions. While we acknowledge there's a subset of Bel'Veth players who love his capability, broadly we think it's paying too many trade-offs for the rest of our audience. I always thought that was weird. People would always talk about how Bel'Veth's early game is the most important part of the champ when she's an infinitely scaling champ. So it runs like contradictory to like literally everything else that exists for these sorts of champions, right? Like Kassadin. You know, does Kassadin have the weakest early game ever? No, but you know, you don't really care too much about his early game. You just need to get to level 16. Anyway, base stats. Less attack speed, lower attack speed ratio, -5 attack damage. Basic attack damage modifier is now at 100% though. Attack cast time, a little lower, so the attack does come out quicker. Total attack animation, adjust to feel better at lower attack speeds. Less armor, but more armor growth. Less HP, but more HP growth. And her model size is a bit smaller. Well, that's interesting. That is a huge chunk of stats that's just changed right away. But it is an adjustment, right? Like having less HP early, but then it equalizes later on as she gets levels. Same with her armor. Same with her attacks, where she loses a bit of a base attack, but the modifier is now, it goes through all the way. So a lot of adjustments here, but the main nerf seems to be to her attack speed and her attack speed ratio. But again, she does have infinitely scaling attack speed, so I'm sure that balances out at some point. Not sure exactly where, but I don't play a lot of Bel'Veth, personally. Passive, Death in Lavender. Attack speed after spellcast, 20% minimum, 40% maximum for 2 attacks. It's now just 20% for 3 seconds, so it's not actually capped on 2 attacks. You get the minimum, but you get it for the full 3 seconds rather than for 2 attacks. That could be pretty interesting later on when you've already stacked a bunch of bonus attack speed and you have 3 seconds where you can just kind of go off, where you can easily get in more than just 2 attacks. Attack speed per stack, 0.28 minimum, 1.1 maximum is now 0.1 minimum, 2% maximum. So a lower minimum, but a higher maximum on the amount of attack speed you can get per stack. Yeah, so they adjusted the scaling, and this could give you the potential to get in way more attacks within that 3 seconds. But again, it feels like it really is going to mess up her early game. Void Surge, so this is her 4-dash ability. Speed, 800 to 1000 is now just equalized at 850, so that is the second point's worth of speed permanently. A little better at level 1, the same at level 2, but slower at every other level. Time between casts, 1 second is now 4 seconds and scales down to 1. Wow. So she actually can't get off all her dashes with that little delay early game. She has to max the ability first, on top of it being slower. Monster damage modifier at 70. So better at 1 and 2, and then it gets worse from 3 points on. Minion damage modifier removed. Wait a minute. She actually will do more damage to minions early. I wonder if this would potentially make Bel'Veth playable as a laner. I wonder. Damage, 0 through 20 plus 100% AD is now 12 to 20 plus 105% AD. So this is more damage, period. It's the same base damage once you max it, but the first 4 levels are giving more base damage, and there's a higher AD scaling. Attack speed to ability haste conversion, a little bit lower. The champion seems mostly just weaker so far. I mean, again, it feels like this probably all gets a little bit better once you scale. But yeah, this seems like a huge hit to the early game. Above and below. So this is her knockup that hits in a line. Damage, 70 to 230 plus 100% bonus attack damage plus 125% ability power. It's now 80 to 320, so a huge buff to the base damage on this with 150% AP ratio. So AP Bel'Veth? Is that possible? Or are they just trying to incentivize you to build items like Rage Blade or potentially Gnasher's Tooth so you can get more attack speed and take advantage of the AP ratio a bit better? Maybe. Slow duration. 1.25 to 2.25 at 50% slow. 2 seconds at 30% slow. So you max this ability last, right? So you get the 4th points worth of time. It'll slow for 2 seconds no matter what, but it is a lower slow ratio. Instead of 50%, it's 30%. But at least you get 2 full seconds of it for most of the game. I feel like by the time you max this ability, it doesn't matter anyway, right? By the time you're hitting level 18, you're going to have a couple items to offset. And this champion loves building Stride Breaker anyway. Knockup duration, 0.75 is now starts lower at 0.6, but scales up to a full second knockup. Royal Maelstrom, this is the circle where she hits you a bunch and has the damage reduction. So damage per strike, 6 to 10 plus 8% AD plus 8% on hit effects, increased up to 300% based on missing health. This is an execute? I didn't know that. So now it's 10 to 18, so higher base damage, plus 12% AD, so better AD scaling, plus 12% on hit effects, better scaling in general. But it's only increased up to 100%. So the execute takes a huge hit here. From 300% to now 100% only. I mean, that's still a lot of bonus damage. And again, the ability is just better. More base damage, higher scaling. But the execute's a little worse. Number of strikes. 6 plus 1 per 33% attack speed. Is now per 40% bonus attack speed. So you need more attack speed to get... You need more attack speed to get those bonus strikes. Damage reduction, 35 to 55 is now 20 through 60, so it starts lower, but it scales up and gets higher. Lifesteal, 20%. Ooh, the lifesteal actually scales now. So it only gave 20%, now it scales up to 40. Lifesteal scaling was removed, though. Right, so you don't get the lifesteal scaling, but you do get the base lifesteal here. So it might not even be worth it to build an actual lifesteal item. I don't know. Since she's an attack speed focused champion, you know, Blade of the Ruin King feels really, really good as an item in general, but maybe it's just not worth it at all anymore. Not entirely sure how that math shakes out. Cooldown 20 seconds to 16 is now 24 to 12. So a longer cooldown early, lower cooldown late. And the monster damage modifier gets increased by 50%. Yeah, you can definitely see it here. You can definitely see that they're cutting out her early game, but making her scale substantially better. Which for a late game champion, or for what's supposed to be a late game champion, it makes a lot of sense. Endless Banquet. So this is her ultimate. Passive on-hit application. Every attack. Oh my. So if I recall correctly, the way this worked was that Bel'Veth did bonus true damage every 2 attacks she did on the same champ, right? Now she just gets it every single attack. Oh my. You effectively doubled the damage of her passive just by doing that. Passive true damage, 6 to 14 plus 12 is now 2 to 6 plus 3. This makes sense to me. I mean, it's worth scaling overall. These numbers took a huge hit, but you're getting it every single hit, right? So you can basically functionally double these numbers. I mean, it seems pretty good. I'm not going to lie. Target swapping. Passive remove when swapping targets. Passive is no longer removed when swapping targets. Oh my. Maximum epic monster stacks. Also took a slow hit here, so she gets a few less stacks from killing dragons, baron, grubs, herald. Passive application requirement. E and Q required to have required Bel'Veth to have attacked the target first. E and Q no longer require. So yeah, you can just do her passive any point, any time to any champion. In exchange for losing a bit of the damage that it actually does. It took a huge damage cut, but now you can apply it permanently at any time. Explosion damage. So this is after she gets a takedown and she can get on the coral and do the big boom. 150 to 250 plus 100 AP plus 25% missing health. It's now 150 to 250 still. The base damage has remained unchanged. An extra 50% ability power modifier. And the execute is a bit weaker. That is a strange adjustment to give it a higher AP scaling, but remove a little bit of the execute damage. Holy crap. Heal per bonus health. 100 to 200 plus 120% AD plus 90% AP. It's now 100 to 400, so more healing. Plus 30% bonus AD. And up to 100% bonus AP. Wow. Okay. The heal on this scaled kind of immensely. It could be a true reset at this point. Basic attack range bonus 75. It actually starts smaller now. Your first point in ultimate, she loses a bunch of range at only 25. It's back to 75 at 2 points, but once you get 3 points in Q, this character has 125 bonus range. Not bad. She's just going to be hitting people over walls. Total attack speed 10 to 20 is now 5 to 25. So once again, lower at 1 point, but bigger once you get 3. Size 10%. And her size scales. Okay, this is a bigger deal than I initially thought. Because your attack range scales with your size. So now she has bonus attack range and her size scales with the point in her ultimate. So she actually has way more bonus range than you think once she gets 3 points in her ultimate. Unempowered buff duration. So 60 is now 45, 90. Infinite. Wow. Okay. So now Bel'Veth's passive, where she turns into a monster, lasts forever. Does this go through death? Or do you have to get it again after you die? But potentially infinite. She stays in her empowered monster form forever now. Presumably, after you get 3 points in it. Postcast lockout. Also lower so you can get off multiple explosions. Or no, this isn't for explosions. This is for how soon afterwards she can do stuff, right? Because right after she casts it, she does the little animation where she flails around and has the noise. Ooh, but she no longer has out of combat move speed. Okay. That is a huge plethora of changes, but she is slower now as well. These are some crazy changes to Bel'Veth, honestly. A huge chunk of change to the stats. Change to her passive. Her Q is slower. She's much slower. I think is the right way to look at it. She's a way slower. Her early game's not nearly as good. But this champion, I can see where they're aiming, where they want her to be like, when she scales, it's doom, right? Just like a lot of our other hard scaling champs like Kassadin or whatever. They're really like pushing you towards focusing on your stacks, right? And her early game's not going to be nearly as hot, which does suck as a jungler, right? To have a weaker early game when you are one of the biggest decision or biggest deciders for what's going to happen for the rest of the game, just based functionally on what happens in the first 10 minutes, where she's going to be substantially weaker. At least from what I understand, it looks like she's just going to be substantially weaker overall. But once she scales, bro, once she gets to level 16 and has a couple items and some good stacks, whew, she could be dangerous. Very dangerous. We'll see, though. Like I said, junglers having a bad early game can really lead to a lot of issues. I'm not a jungler, so obviously there are probably others who are looking at these changes and have a much more defined opinion of what all of this means and, you know, how it could potentially change how the character functions and how well she plays. But I'm excited. I am excited. The minion damage modifier also makes me think, you know, can this champion potentially be a laner now? We'll see. Speaking of the Void, we also have Kai'Sa, who gets one change to her passive. Despite her recent buff, Kai'Sa remains weaker than expected, especially late game, so her passive second skin, Caustic Wounds. 4 through 24 plus 12 AP, plus champion level, plus 3% ability power per stack. It's now 40 through 30, so it scales a little bit better with her level. Ability power remains unchanged. Again, level scales up a little higher. Seems like a small change, but a nice little buff. So it's just Kai'Sa scales a little bit better. Yep. So Kai'Sa also gets a nice little buff to her scaling. Locke. Again, the champ, the few times I've seen it, seems utterly busted. I have not gotten to play it myself because it's always taken or banned. I've only gotten to play him in an arena game when I was playing with friends in a big lobby. Otherwise, I have not been able to see really any of this champ at all, but he's getting another nerf. Locke continues to climb the mastery curve, so we're continuing nerfs to keep him in line. So 35 less health, so he is squishier. Makes sense to me. Ritual Nails, it looks like they're hitting this ability again. 50 through 82 plus 20% is now 40 through 72 plus 20%. So minus 10 base damage. 3 nail damage. 150 to 246 plus 60 is now 120 to 216, so minus 30 base damage. Yeah, so a huge hit to the base damage. The scaling for his Q remains unchanged. Soul Ignition, so this is where he gets gray health and runs faster. Move speed 40 through 60 plus 2% is now just a base 40%. The move speed no longer scales with the ability level. Gray health base value 40 through 160 plus 120 is now 40 through 120 plus 100%. So they hit the gray health, both the base healing and the scaling on it. Wow, minus 20% as well for the ability power. So yeah, a bunch of base stuff got changed, right? He has less base health, less base damage on his Q, less base healing, less base movement speed. Right? So some huge hits there to bring him down. I don't know that it'll be enough, but he is an assassin. So you kind of have to be careful about nerfing these sorts of champs too hard. Because at some point, right, like they are assassins, right? They are supposed to be the example of this champion gets ahead and it's the most broken thing you've ever seen. So they're going to have to be a little bit careful with this, but it is nice to see that they brought him down a little bit. Maybe I'll actually get the chance to play this champion now. Maokai has gradually faded out of both top and jungle play since our last major work on him. I think that ultimately his top lane experience is not the greatest for all parties involved, so for now we're mainly focusing on buffing his jungle. I can kind of see that. Maokai is like Gragas. In a way, when it comes to his play pattern against melee. He's like very, very anti-melee. Right? The only difference is he doesn't have Gragas' mobility. Right? But with these sorts of champs, you can't really force them to fight. They have decent sustain. Deal okay damage. They're also deceptionally tanky. I mean, yeah. I don't know that we necessarily want to bring him back top lane. But his monster damage modifier did get buffed here. Plus 10. And his ability power ratio on his Q got buffed as well. So if you are a Maokai enjoyer in the jungle, this is a nice little buff. Potentially bring him back into relevancy. They do have to be careful with it though. Maokai has a similar problem that a lot of other champs in the jungle you have to be careful with. He has a point and click, unavoidable engage. So, Mordekaiser, last patch we overshot last patch with the R buffs. You think? 13% is a lot of stats to steal for an ability you can't do anything about. After reassessing what he looks like with a meaningfully stronger ult, decided to revert the R buff entirely in favor of improving his ability to catch and keep opponents in range. So his E is remaining buffed and now has a 2-second lower cooldown. But they reverted the change to his R. Okay. Yeah. It makes sense to me. The biggest problem with Mordekaiser, I mean, there's two big problems with them. First of all is that he's a juggernaut. He struggles to catch and keep a hold of certain champs. Mordekaiser's always had this problem of the way you want to build him versus the way you need to build him. The way you want to build him is having your Riftmaker, your Liandries, right? And then you just go to town and you have these huge stats and you're dealing all this damage. But then you're kind of forced in a lot of cases, especially against more mobile or ranged targets, you have to build like Protobelt Rylai's, which you don't want to build those items. They're not like the most efficient, but it's like the only way you can catch people. So I think this is a good buff. Rather than improving his ult, which just takes a stat checky champion and makes him even more stat checky, especially in counter matchups where you already couldn't fight him. Instead, buff his E, right? Give Mordekaiser more chances to potentially catch his targets and do what he wants to do, as opposed to just making an already unfun play style or something that's unfun to play against even more unfun to play against by making it hopeless. So I think that's a good change to Mordekaiser. Neferi. Neferi remains a hot topic in the meta both for solo queue and pro play. While we are quite happy with how many people have taken her up since her rework, she's still on the strong end, especially when she really gets the ball rolling with back-to-back-to-back ultimates. Well, that's because you can't mess it up, right? This champion has an untargetable and a point-and-click ult. Right, you can't mess it up. So Aura called the pack, the point-and-click ultimate. 150 300 plus 120%. It now lost 25 base damage and 20% AD scaling. Wow. Damage per pack mate also reduced. Really? By about 3 or 2.5? 2.5 doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to count that per pack mate. And minus 2% bonus damage scaling with the pack mate. So this is a huge damage nerf to her R. Makes sense. Like I just said, it's a point and click. You can't mess it up. So, there's really no reason for the point and click to do a whole bunch of bonus damage when you can't mess up using it or hitting with it. Riven! Please nerf this champion. Endless Hunger's addition to the game has given Riven an extremely potent new tool that fits her play pattern almost perfectly. Yes, just nerf her. Bonus attack damage. 25 is now 20, so minus 5% attack damage ratio. Wind Slash. Bonus attack damage ratio 60 to 180 is now 55 to 165. So finally, we get some more Riven nerfs specifically aimed at her ultimate. This does make it feel less likely like she just hits R and steamrolls you, right? But Riven's kind of been a balance issue for solo queue. I'm not going to say anything about pro play, obviously, but this champion, when played on the high end, she almost feels completely unstoppable. She has so much mobility that you can't even catch her with a champ that beats her. So I do think this is a reasonable nerf. Tap down her R. Both the bonus damage she gets just by being Riven, as well as her little finisher there with the Wind Slash. Makes it a bit less overly punishing for this champ to just hit R and then face roll her keyboard and just wipe you out. She still has to be a little bit smart with how she plays, hopefully. Sylas. They overshot the target? You think so? I've been seeing a lot of Sylas jungle, specifically. Chain Lash is Q. First lash damage, 40 to 140 plus 45%. It's now 40 to 120 plus 40%. So he lost 20 base damage and 5% AP scaling on his Q. Wow. Pulling back the chains of tad to prevent him from bullying too hard. So is this actually, is this still more than it was before? I don't quite remember. If it is, I think Sylas will be okay still. Sylas has always been in a very interesting spot because of his ability to steal ultimates. The amount of utility and potential playmaking he brings to his team has really, really high variance. But at the end of the day, he is kind of an assassin. So I think this is a decent change. Sure. Volibear. Since our direct and systemic adjustments, the bear has been hibernating from dusk till dawn for a couple patches. Yeah, Dusk and Dawn kind of broke him a little bit, but then they had to put in those nerfs, and now I don't see Volibear at all. So Thundering Smash, lower cooldown early. So I think this will actually... We're giving him more changes to gap close, especially for laners, without raising his already thrilling ceiling of spell chaining. Really? I feel like that might be better for Volley Jungle, since he'll be moving quickly more often. Right? That's minus 2 seconds every single time he casts his Q. And Volley top lane can be a problem because he's one of the most overbearing, pun intended, champions top lane when he gets ahead. This champion gets ahead top lane and he dives you on cooldown. So we'll see. Hopefully this doesn't cause too many issues, but his win rate top lane has not been looking good for a while now, so I don't think this will be too terribly bad. Zac! We believe that Zac brings unique gameplay and class diversity to the jungle. That said, his presence in the jungle has fallen quite a bit over the more recent patches. So they're increasing his armor growth and lowering the cooldown on Elastic Slingshot. This scares me a little bit, believe it or not, because of Zac top lane. Zac top lane, I feel like, is like underrated. Like people don't know just how horrific this champion is to deal with top lane. You can't kill him. You can't all in him. He has infinite sustain. But taking top lane out of the equation, I can see that this would be a nice little buff to his jungle, especially to his E. This is his primary gank tool, his primary mobility. So getting it out even 1 second sooner, I can see they're being a tad careful by only doing 1 second. But like I said, the armor growth does scare me specifically for top lane. Does scare me a little bit, yeah. But whatever. Zac top is like a rare pick. I don't see a lot of it. Bastion Breaker. I don't think I've seen this item at all since the start. Been near the bottom pick rate since release, yep. I mean, it's just kind of difficult to go a full lethality build and justify building Bastion Breaker over a number of other lethality items. You know? So minus 200 gold, shape charge damage 30 through 150%, lethality true damage. Now 50 plus 150%. So it's a cheaper item and its effect is a little bit stronger. 200 gold does make a world of difference. It could be the difference between buying this item over another item when you back. But I still don't see a whole lot of assassins really taking advantage of the side laning off of it. I think like Zed's the only assassin that really comes to mind when I think of that. Anyone who wants to like split push like that is not building lethality. I don't know, maybe I'll try it on like Pantheon or something, but I feel like Assassin Pantheon's not the vibe. Terminus. Meant to be one of the premium capstone items for scaling on hit builds, but it's been more of a mid-game spike than a true late-game scaling option. So 30 magic damage on hit is now 30 plus 10% attack damage plus 10% ability power. So the item's better. That's it. It's just better. Bonus scaling on the attack damage and ability power. They didn't even lower the base amount. So what's stopping the people who were building this in the middle from still building it in the middle and taking advantage of the scaling? Well, Terminus is just better. Yuntal. Yuntal Wallace has fallen significantly over this year from its spot as the go-to scaling crit item. We believe the game continues to benefit from its function as a scaling option, so we're buffing it up. So the cost 100 gold cheaper and 5% more attack speed. Cute little buffs to bring the item back into viability. I vibe with it. Runes, Jack of all trades. This is getting nerfed for sure, right? Adaptive force at 5, 10 stack break points, 10 to 15 is now 8 to 20. Yep. Just some nerfs to this. The potions were a little too strong. It was a little too easy. Or sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong thing. This isn't the potion one. This is the bonus per stat you went into. Which makes sense. You have a lot of hybrid-ish champs that don't mind having a little bit of AP, a little bit of AD, bonus movement speed, bonus everything, right? Might as well have named it Jacks of all trades. But yeah, getting nerfed a little bit. Feels good, man. And yeah, some changes to Era Mayhem. Some Magma Chamber skins. Prestige Magma Chamber. Is this just Infernal? I see Vhagar, and I see him with a crown. So that makes me think it's just the Infernal skin, because this is like Teemo, right? It's Infernal, but it's Prestige. All right. So that's going to be our patch notes, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are watching just the YouTube portion of the patch notes, I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm going to see if Classic's up and available, and if so, we're going to come back into it. So until then, my YouTube peeps, I will catch y'all next time. Peace.